Who will be victorious? Only the faithful!
Welcome back to another Star Mini Gaming YouTube video, and today I'm rocking out my Deadpool. But today we are continuing our review of the GW audio drama series from the Black Library. This is the third part, and it's titled The Lords of Helstone. And like the other two, this one begins with Nagash kind of having a monologue, and we continue to see the transition of this character. You know, initially in the first one, he is arrogant, sure of his own power. He's like, none can contend with Nagash. In my realm, I am everything, and everything is me. Nothing goes without my knowing of it. And in the second one, we begin to see a little bit of doubt in the intro. He begins to realize that he's weakened a little bit by events that have gone on, and you know, we don't know if all of these intros are kind of like back to back to back, or if they're over a broader span of time. Well, in this third one, he openly admits to having weakness, and he's angry with Sigmar because he blames Sigmar for his weakness and his defeat thus far at the hands of the Chaos Gods. And so again, we get to kind of see the evolution of Nagash's character as all these events have gone on. It's kind of interesting because I've been reading some of the other fluff that's come out, some of the other books, and in it, it's kind of come to light that whenever Sigmar built the Stormcast Eternals, we already knew that he drew warriors from all of these different realms that had called on his name before they died, and they were reforged anew as the Stormcast, separate from their old lives, renamed and all. But this is really the first time that we kind of see, or based upon this and the other stuff, where it's kind of beginning to paint a picture where we see that Sigmar didn't necessarily come to the lords of these realms, such as Nagash and Ariel, and say, I'd like to recruit from you. He just went and basically said, you're mine, you're mine, you're mine for my army. And so in this book, we really begin to learn, or it's confirmed that Lord Celestin Tarsis, who we've been following through this story, is originally from the realm of death, and that he was a living mortal. So we've begun to learn that maybe not all these realms, but at least the realm of death had regular humans living in it, not just vampires and the undead. And that before chaos came, there were at least quite a few kind of populating the overworld, as it was called. In the earlier video, I talked about how the realms, at least this one, and now from reading the Gal Miraz book, where they're hunting for that, and whenever they go to Ariel's realm of life, we're beginning to see that a lot of these realms are made up of two levels. The outer realm, which is where basically everyone lives, and then the inner realm, which is more of like a hidden fortress, where each of the basically gods of these realms that were the incarnates of magic in the end times, where they basically have hidden themselves from chaos. And it's always difficult to find, obviously, or else they wouldn't be able to hide from chaos. And in this one, we see early on that Manfred speaks to Tarsis and says that the reason that chaos hasn't been able to find it is that the gates to this inner realm, there are 9 of them within the realm of death, and that they only live for 9 months, and then the gates die and new gates are born. Every 9 months this cycle continues, and that's part of why chaos has never been able to find their way in, because the gates are always moving. And he says that we could be stuck here for an eternity searching, or we can go to the ruined city of Helstone and find a relic there that's called the Fang, and this will guide us to the doors wherever they currently are. So if they die, the Rune Fang will guide us to where the new ones are. If they don't die and we're able to make it there in time, the Rune Fang will guide us to where they currently are. It'll always point to wherever the doors are. So they set out and they come to Helstone, and as soon as they get there, we are introduced to another unit of the Death Faction. In all of these stories, we've slowly seen more and more of the Death Faction introduced. In the first one, we obviously had vampires and Manfred and skeletal warriors, and the Dread Abyssal introduced. In the second one, we had the addition of the Vargulfs and then just like different ghosts and spirits that attacked the Chaos Warriors in the storm. And then in this one, we have the introduction of the disgusting ghouls. Sorry, I forgot for a minute what they're called. The ghouls and the crypt, and their bigger versions, the crypt horrors or whatever they're called, something like that. Anyways, when they arrive at the town, there's instantly a very large warband of these ghouls that comes out to meet them. And of course, Manfred, being powerful and in many ways a master being of these kinds of creatures, just walks up and basically pacifies all of them, and they immediately serve him. And so he sends them off to go speak to all the other ghouls that live in this massive ancient ruined city and kind of pass on the word that he's arrived. And so the Stormcast set up a camp, and before too long, they come under attack by Chaos forces. And for the first time, we see Nurgle forces here in this realm. Up until this point, we've only seen Khorne bloodbound troops. But a Nurgle force attacks, and Manfred is nowhere to be found. And so the Stormcast, with good reason, assume that Manfred has betrayed them and left them, and has used them to draw out the Nurgle forces so that he can find this relic for himself. Which, of course, being Manfred, that's not a far stretch to believe. And so they skirmish, and they manage to drive back the Chaos forces, and they pursue into the city and in an organized fashion, and there's a couple more skirmishes. And finally, there's a trap that's sprang by the Nurgle and Beastmen forces that they've been fighting. And basically, the Stormcasts have their back pressed against a wall, and it looks like they could die, but they're definitely, not going to go down without a fight. And then, predictably, to a degree, Manfred shows up and lets out a cry, and just a horde beyond number of ghouls from the entire city turns up, and wights start bursting out of these tombs and crypts and riding forth into battle on their steeds with their troops, and just the massacre of the Chaos forces happens at the hand of this death army. And Manfred, returns to Tarsus, and kind of this attitude of, did you really doubt me? Have I not proven myself? And of course, Tarsus is smart enough to know that Manfred is just with them as long as it's convenient for him. And at this point, he has the Fang, and he explains that he needed the Stormcast to lure the Chaos forces away, or else the ghouls would not have been able to reach the Fang. The Chaos forces were encamped in the way. And so, reluctantly, to a degree, Tarsus and him continue their friendship. And that's really the end of this story. And initially I thought, well, this doesn't really advance the plot too much. Sure, they get this important item, but the least amount of movement for their goal has really been made in the story. And so at first I was a little bit disappointed, but then I really thought about it, and I was like, well, that's true, but this also is a segment of the story that has the greatest character development for Tarsus. As you read any of the novels, if you do, and you get more into the fluff of the Age of Sigmar, you'll find that different Stormcasts, to varying degrees, will remember their old lives. Some of them remember it perfectly well, and they're not bothered by it, for the most part. Some of them have kind of flashbacks, and where they're kind of like haunted by their past, and they may struggle with it. Some may not. And some of them have no recollection of it whatsoever and don't care. And so you kind of have, this spectrum of where everyone's at. And Tarsus begins to, as he's here revisiting places from his past life that he didn't realize was his past life, that he lived here, more and more things are flooding back. And especially in this one does that occur. So in this one, Tarsus learns that his real name was Tarsum, I'm like, that's really not very far from Tarsus. So it kind of begs the question, was GW being a little bit lazy maybe with the names and choosing to have both his Stormcast name and his prior life name be basically the same? Or does it kind of show something maybe a little bit more about the Stormcast, or where their new name is similar to their old name, so that it's easier for them to become accustomed to the new name? If your name is James and you're called Jamie by someone, it's a lot closer, and I would assume a lot easier to adapt to answering to that than it would be to taking your name from James to Paul. Um, so I don't know if that's part of the Stormcast thing, and their new name being close to their old, so that it feels more natural to them. But Tarsus also learns that he was from this realm, the realm of death. Like, that becomes solidified for sure. There's no question about it. He also learns that he was from Helstone, and he was a lord of the town, or of the city, before he died. He learns that he died in battle. He was actually cut down by a bloodthirster whenever the Chaos forces attacked the realm of death initially and were invading. That he stood in the defense of Helstone. And he also remembers, he's kind of having brief flashbacks, and Manfred is explaining, what happened in this city, what happened in the battle and all, and he has a memory that comes back as a result of all this, of him fighting side by side with Manfred in the defense of the city. So we don't know if Manfred has any inkling of the fact that he knew Tarsus before Tarsus was a Stormcast Eternal or not. The book kind of has that a little bit ambivalent. It could go either way based upon what's written, but Tarsus now knows that he knew Manfred before, and that may be impacting some of the feelings that he has for him now. So that's the end of the third segment. I would eagerly await part 4. Probably before that video comes out, I did finish the Search for Galmaraz books. There's 2 books in it, 2 stories within it. One where some of the Stormcast go to find Lady Alariel in the Realm of Life, and their encounter with the Sylvaneth there, and the Nurgle forces they're attacking. And then also, whenever the Stormcast Eternals reclaim Galmaraz for Sigmar from the Tzeentch forces that are holding it there. So I hope to have both of those out before this next one comes out, but we'll see. Till next time, happy gaming.